Today, one of this year's biggest games already sucks. We'll leave you to guess which one it is. This is CheckPoint. Welcome to CheckPoint, where Beej and I remain healthy, uninjured, and ready to play.
That's right, sports fans. We're prepared to give it our all. Maillard, exothermic, Fischer esterification, even, heck, the other team won't know what hit them.
What will be hitting them?
Sports!
No matter what you may think of the game, Hogwarts Legacy, aka J.K. Rowling's Distant Growlings, has been an undeniable success sales-wise. In a recent Warner Brothers Discovery earnings call, CEO David Zaslav, you know, the one who disappeared all those cartoons and then canceled Batgirl, boasted 15 million units and over $1 billion in sales, before saying that a big reason for the success is that Warner Brothers owns Harry Potter, which, granted, sounds like an obvious thing to say, but his point is that not many publishers also own their big IPs like this, and he wants Warner Brothers to take advantage of other IPs they own, like the DC movie universe. They apparently own that, according to him. It wasn't clear if he was confirming their intent to make a mediocre open-world Superman game, but he theorized that specifically that was the sort of thing that they should be doing more of. In a quote that screams, "Man who doesn't know about video games talks to shareholders he assumes also don't know about video games," Zaslav said, quote, "If you look at Hogwarts Legacy, a big piece of the success of that game is that you go into it. If you're a player, you go into that game and you're in that world. That's kind of a new concept. Before, it was gaming and it was storytelling, and now it's very difficult to understand what the definition of the metaverse is." Yeah, Dave, it sure is, and you're not helping. J.K. Rowling's screaming and howling is many things, but it's not metaverse. And it also isn't kind of a new concept for a magical fantasy role-playing game to have sort of an open world. And if you think it is, it's going to blow your mind when I show you Betrayal at Krondor.
The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom is poised to launch all over us on May 12th, and I, for one, welcome the end of the plethora of speculative fiction masquerading as rigorous journalism and the beginning of the endless stream of guides, tips, tricks, hot takes, and cold shits blanketing each and every video game news site for the next 6 months. Of course, I won't actually see any of them come Friday, as I'll be ensconced in my own Zelda bubble, trading off in set intervals with Heather, as we're only buying the one copy of the game. And since this is the last you'll be hearing from me on the subject, until Tears of the Kingdom inevitably breaks a sales record or two, let's dig into a Zelda roundup! Nintendo Australia recently ran an ad depicting a middle-aged white guy riding the bus home from work, feeling a little plaintive and worn out from what I'm assuming from his attire is a slog of an Australian office job, so like sorting koalas or something. Upon arriving home, though, he notices a copy of Tears of the Kingdom on his coffee table and decides to get in some gaming. Flash forward to either the next morning or the start of the new work week, and he's on the bus again, playing more Zelda in handheld mode, all the while whispering little affirmations to himself while he assembles rafts and fights bokoblins. He's a happy man now, and that's good. The sky's a little bluer. His outlook's a little brighter. And truth be told, I didn't know this was the original because YouTuber Winners Losers posted an edit dubbed over with Gary Jules' Mad World from the Donnie Darko soundtrack, and I 100% believed that was the real ad. Seriously, the lyrics sync up with the visuals more often than Dark Side of the Moon. If Nintendo Australia is going to lean into making more melancholy ads, I think they should definitely dig out more emo tracks from the millennial generation and start making some AMVs. Wake me up inside on, indeed. Eiji Aonuma spoke recently on the key theme of Tears of the Kingdom, and if you thought it was flight or sky or islands, you're wrong. It's hands. Yup, hands. Aonuma stated, quote, "For this title, we chose hands as the key theme to bring them all together. For example, abilities that Link uses to solve puzzles are all released from his hand and arm. We even included this symbolically in the game's mechanics, such as having scenes that use hands when opening special doors. Hands open doors. Good stuff. No word yet on what body parts were inspirations for other Zelda games, though I'm pretty sure Breath of the Wild used abs. Lining up for video game releases is a hallowed tradition among die-hard fans of any series, but Captain Nintendo Dude is taking it to the limit. His newest vlog shows him lining up at the New York City Nintendo store for the Tears of the Kingdom release 72 hours in advance, which you'd think would put him first in line, but he's actually 5th or 6th behind Sage and Toasty, two guys from Canada who got there 5 days in advance. But Beej, I hear you cry, you're from Canada? Why aren't you in line in New York? Well, gentle reader, I got on the wrong plane last week and ended up in Minneapolis, and I couldn't find their Nintendo store, so I was shit out of luck. Also, I found out later that Heather already had the game on pre-order, so in retrospect, I should have probably told her I was going to the airport so that she could have talked me out of my mad plan.
One of the year's supposed biggest releases quickly became one of its biggest letdowns, and the devs responsible for the dismal PC port of Jedi Survivor breathed a sigh of relief as the unblinking eye of the gaming discourse rolled its horrid gaze towards Redfall, a co-op survival shooter from Arcane, the developers behind Dishonored, Deathloop, and the more recent version of Prey. Although technically, said the commenter, attempting to ram the bridge of their glasses through their skull, the absolute chads at Arcane Leon developed Dishonored and Deathloop and half of Wolfenstein Youngblood, aka the games we liked, while the irresponsible plebs at Arcane Austin developed Prey, which we've retroactively decided was bollocks because Redfall is bad. Or was it Microsoft's fault for forcing these skilled single-player narrative developers to sully themselves on a co-op looter-shooter, even though it was in development before Microsoft even bought Bethesda? Trouble in development? Executive meddling? Who can say? We won't ever know why Redfall is such a disappointment because companies don't admit fault when a supposedly AAA game falls on its face. Except in this case, where Xbox head Phil Spencer did say that Redfall's launch was disappointing, admitting the game's Metacritic score landed double digits below Microsoft's internal mock review process, implying they figured the game would land at least in the 70s on the review aggregator. I haven't explained why people think the game is such a disappointment, so factoring in bad or broken enemy AI, empty and uninspired landscapes, boring or easy boss fights, the lack of matchmaking in a multiplayer game, no 60 FPS at launch, all for a $70 price tag. While I appreciate Phil's apology and promise to take responsibility, I think what we're learning, if nothing else, is Microsoft's internal review process is garbage. Thanks for joining us today. We sure learned a lot, didn't we, Beej?
Yeah, I learned all about the Minneapolis airport.
And I learned all about repatriating someone from the Minneapolis airport.
I also learned that the TSA comes by their humorless reputation honestly.
But their supposedly unbribable nature has been greatly overstated.
Should we stop talking now?
Oh, yes.
Coming up, Starfield just got an M for Mature rating from the ESRB for depicting violence, foul language, sex, and drug use. And guess which one they won't actually show you on screen? Hint, it's using jetpacks to bone.
To clarify, the ESRB's description of Starfield, specific, if you go to the ESRB website, it actually has like a couple quotes from the game.
We know you have it on your start page.
Yeah, and one of the quotes is, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's essentially like, boy, that was good sex, but let's try it without jetpacks next time.
Yes.
Implying that you have sex while wearing jetpacks. And I don't, is it just, I don't know.
All we know is that the line is there and it's meant there to be funny or coy or cute or whatever, because why would you say that? If you watch two people humping in jetpacks and then it like, fades to black and comes back, be like, boy, that was good sex, but no jetpacks, please, we're English. You know, like, it's like.
Do you just sort of remain largely motionless and like feather the thrust button and just sort of like keep ascending? I don't know how it's supposed to work.
Trying to do it in sync. I guess if you had somebody if you could sync the jetpacks together and just let them autonomously do it themselves.
You're just like, we are having sex.
Zero-G fuck machine.
Yeah, awful.
Which was my nickname in high school.
Of course it was. Oh my God. Another point that I didn't have a clean way to sort of like, because we do actually care about the craft of what we write on the show. I didn't have a clean way to like make it work in the end of the Redfall story, because it came to like a nice button there that's like, wow, your internal review process must suck, Microsoft. But also, their internal review process, what Spencer is saying there, double digits higher than where it landed, which was 59 when it's 55 now, but it was 59 when he said that.
Right.
That
They're
means
hoping for 79 or 80.
well, I don't know. Like double digits at minimum means like in the 70s, basically, right?
Okay, yeah.
So it's just the implication that like their internal process was like, yeah, this will get 70s, and they were like, all right, cool.
Which meant that they were probably thinking that it's like we have a 10-point margin of error either way.
I guess, but
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
It also feels like giving up.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't know. I wouldn't love if like the internal review process was like, yeah, this will be like, like a 7 out of 10 probably. Like, wouldn't you? You would want. Actually, Paul brought up the point when we were talking about it, which is like, there's a bunch of stuff in that game that is like glitchy and broken, right?
Sure,
Like
okay.
people clipping through floors, or like AI that goes weird, or just like an enemy that stands there and doesn't respond to you, like that sort of thing. And it's like that's stuff that can be fixed. But it seems like a lot of the problems with Redfall are just like deeply inherent to the design of the game. Like an internal review process isn't going to be like, yeah, this game's like a 7 because it just kind of sucks from the ground up, and then Arcane be like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll just go fix that. Like it's unsalvageable at that point. This is not something you can patch out of this game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like there are just inherent. It's like Cyberpunk, right? Like you can't patch these things.
You'd have to rebuild it from the ground up.
Garbage from the start,
Yeah.
right? So it's just like it's bummer, but it's wild to hear Phil Spencer be like, yeah, this is disappointing, and we're gonna do our best. But the thing is, he's like, like we made a commitment to, he mentions like Sea of Thieves,
Right.
which like started good but shaky, and then they've like really put a polish on it.
Yeah.
And he mentions a couple other games, but it's like this isn't that kind of game.
No.
Right?
No.
Like, how are you going to solve these things?
I mean, we've always talked about how releasing a video game is a goddamn miracle whenever it happens.
Yeah.
Right? That it's just like, it is so much work and it's so many moving parts, and the bigger the game and the bigger the studio and bigger the game, but in terms of like the more complicated, because there's more people involved with it and the more moving parts from the development side that are involved, having anything come out is like, oh my God, I can't believe it actually made it to market.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, if you want a boating analogy, I guess you could say it's like trying to cross the Atlantic for the first time, right? Sailing to the New World. You're like, well, we think there's a way to the Indies.
Right.
And then but then even after that, it's like, well, we're going to try to make it to the New World. And if you kind of have an idea that there's something at the end of this journey that you're expecting, and you set off on it, and you're like, right, and then I ended up in like South America, which is not where you intended to go in the first place. And you're like, that's not what I wanted, but we got something, and I guess we'll just kill a bunch of natives and bring back all their gold. Like it kind of like, we got to pillage the environment for whatever we can get and take it back to the king. I'm really enjoying this analogy. You have no idea. We have to take as much money as we can from the people who are experiencing this and make sure that we get it all back into our coffers, and we don't care if they think that this whole trip is a 5 out of 10.
Amazing. That's
This has been another one of Bija's trademark metaphors that
Get away from him.
get away from him.
uh-huh.